On the night of August 24, 1814, the President of the United States fled the White House on horseback. Behind him, the sky was turning orange. British soldiers were marching through the streets of Washington, D.C., the capital of the United States, setting fire to every government building they could find. The Capitol building burned. The Treasury burned. And then they walked up to the front door of the White House, sat down at the dining room table, ate the dinner that had already been prepared for President Madison, toasted to their victory, and then they burned that down too. This actually happened on American soil, to the capital of the United States of America. Here is exactly how it went down. It was the War of 1812. America and Britain were 2 years deep into a brutal conflict. And in the summer of 1814, British General Robert Ross landed 4,000 soldiers on the shores of Maryland with one single objective: march to Washington and destroy it completely. The American military response was catastrophic. At the Battle of Bladensburg, just 7 miles from the capital, American forces collapsed almost immediately. Soldiers dropped their weapons and ran. It was so embarrassing that historians later named it the Bladensburg Races. The road to Washington was wide open. President James Madison himself had ridden out to observe the battle. When he saw his own army fleeing in every direction, he turned his horse around and rode back toward the White House as fast as he possibly could. But his wife, Dolly Madison, was still inside. And what Dolly did in those final desperate minutes before the British arrived is one of the most remarkable acts in all of American history. Instead of simply running, she stayed. She refused to leave until she had saved something irreplaceable. She ordered her staff to carefully remove the full-length portrait of George Washington hanging in the dining room. The original, painted from life. She absolutely refused to let the British capture or destroy the image of the man who had built this nation from nothing. She saved that portrait. Then she fled into the night. Less than 1 hour later, British soldiers walked through the front door of the White House. They found the dining room table completely set, wine already poured, food still warm on the plates. A dinner prepared for the President of the United States that he would never sit down to eat. So the British soldiers sat down at his table, ate his food, drank his wine, toasted their victory inside the home of the American president. And then they piled up the furniture, soaked it in oil, and set the White House on fire. The flames were so enormous that people standing in Baltimore, 40 miles away, could see the orange glow lighting up the entire sky. But here is the part that almost nobody ever tells you. Washington was not saved by the American military. It was saved by a storm. A massive, violent thunderstorm rolled into Washington that same night. Winds so powerful, they extinguished many of the fires burning across the city. Some historical accounts describe a tornado actually touching down in the streets, throwing British cannons through the air and killing several of their soldiers outright. The British, rattled by the storm and fearing a renewed American counterattack, withdrew from Washington within 24 hours of arriving. The White House was eventually rebuilt. The Capitol was restored. Washington survived. But for one single night in the summer of 1814, the capital of the United States was in enemy hands. The White House was a smoldering ruin. The president was a fugitive riding through the darkness. The only foreign power in all of history to ever occupy Washington, D.C. And it almost permanently stayed that way.